WWCode for bringing this community together. I think it's a wonderful community and giving us the opportunity to share our story with everyone here. So as an organization who serves small business, we've definitely been on the front line as the pandemic are unfolding. And my name is Linardi, and I have the privilege of actually leading the product and design team at Clover. If you haven't heard about us before, at Clover, we provide a complete point-of-sale business management solution and payment acceptance platform that enable businesses to operate holistically. And while we do business across all the various segments, our main customers are all the small business. So it's been roughly about 6 years since Clover's been brought to the market, and it's definitely been quite a ride for us. We went from building our very first device to shipping over 1 million sometime last year, and we've processed over 100 billion annualized payment. So it's a fast-paced organization. Things goes quickly, and before I jump into some of our key learnings that we had as we're going through the pandemic. First, let me start by taking you back to the beginning of the year, where Clover was the beginning of 2020. It was around January, and we just completed our 2020 planning before the holidays. And I was particularly excited about how well planned 2020 was. Right? We had clear goals, with solid plans tied to revenue, with growth KPI, with hiring plan for the full year. And we also have a strong growth and market momentum that we've been riding for the last 6 years. And so it was supposed to be a really well-organized year from us. And then the pandemic hit, right? And overnight, we've normally been very much of an in-office culture as an organization. Overnight, we had to send everybody home to work from home. Our hiring was frozen and put on hold and say, hang on, there's something going on. You can't proceed with hiring. And I think the worst part was we were watching the impact that the pandemic had for small businesses, which are very vulnerable, I think, segment within our ecosystem and business to begin with, even before then. And they're definitely being impacted disproportionately by all the market shutdown. So at that point, we had a decision to make. Right, we had a fully booked roadmap with commitments. We had revenue and growth target roadmap items. But on the other hand, we had our business owners who are trying to be flexible, who are trying to figure it out, but is really having a tough time figuring out what they should do and how they can adapt during this crisis. So at that time, we made a decision to pause much of our planned roadmap and set aside focus on growth and revenue at the immediate time, and to redirect most of our team into initiatives that can actually help our small business during this crisis. Right? And so key things like fee suppression, helping our small businesses actually understand and gain access to the PPP loan, which is the Paycheck Protection Program, as well as helping our small businesses who historically has been on brick and mortar to pivot and stand up their digital presence so they can still operate during the shutdown. So one specific initiative that I was going to share a little bit more is around the order ahead for restaurants. So as a product team, we service a large percentage of restaurants within the US. So restaurants definitely one of our main area that we support. And we've been planning to work on order ahead, delivery integration, which was a trend that was up and coming, a lot of consumer utilizing it. But overnight, it became a need for all of the small businesses. And so we've been working with partners to try and pilot a program originally targeted for Q3, and we quickly accelerated all of those integration effort into April. And that allows us to support some of our restaurants and some of our businesses. And we're seeing, small business trying to sign up for various delivery service, right? All the popular ones that you've heard out there. But we also realized that these are expensive and complex services for many of our restaurants to actually be able to adopt. Now, at the time, we were thinking about it and reflecting back that our strategy and our focus has always been on partnership, but we know that we have the platform that had scale and reach to actually make a significant difference to these businesses. So we quickly actually pivot and pull the team together to build a native order ahead experience for all of our restaurants. The team rallied around launching an online ordering just over a 3-week period from scratch, from absolutely nothing to bringing it to market. And providing a really easy experience from 2-click setup so that our small business can actually understand that. And the other aspect is, while we understood that small business are very willing to pay for all the services, and we knew we could charge and make money from the services, we decided to actually roll this out to our entire population and everyone that we're serving for free, because it was more important at the time, and continue to be, to service and help them sustain and support their business in this very difficult time. So I'm going to pause there, and with that as a backdrop, share some of our key learnings and takeaway, more so as an organization as we go through that process, and some takeaway that hopefully will be helpful for this community and audience to hear as well. So the first one is that it was incredibly important for us to be purpose-driven and not just plan-driven, right? Goals and plans allow us to be able to focus on specific outcomes, specific deliverables. But anchoring back on purpose, it defines why we do it. And for us within Clover, our purpose has always been to simplify the life of the business owner, right, in order to allow them to thrive. And so having that within our back pocket allow us to use that purpose as the decision helper to decide what to do, right? And rallying around that purpose as we are sending our entire team home to operate and work in a way that we've never done before allows us to maintain a really strong connection. And I would actually argue a deeper connection as an organization. And we saw higher engagement, faster output. It was a team on a mission, right? And so number one is the importance actually anchoring back on your purpose as an organization in times like this. The second thing is, in time of crisis, speed matters, right? And this is the ability for us to kind of go through, quickly decide what are the trade-offs, what are the different expectations we have to reset, making the decision to pivot quickly instead of taking our time, having the discussion, having the debate, and taking a long time to make decision. Because an average small business have roughly 3 weeks cash flow and cash reserve before they get in financial trouble, right? So there is no luxury to actually waiting and debating. And sometimes as the organization get larger, we get caught up within our own sort of chain and conversation and making decisions. And that speed really does matter at times. And then the last thing, and I think this is a big one for me, right, is that we often think about things that we can do to deliver social impact and social good and business success and growth as two parallel competing tracks, right? You're either focusing on one or the other. But we saw what we were able to see here, I think, during this process, was that there's really, often no trade-off between social impact and business success. That in fact, there is deep synergy, especially when you're able to focus on the longer term goal, right? When we're not focused on the short term revenue for this quarter, and then immediate terms. Oftentimes, by making sure that we're focusing on delivering meaningful impact to whoever we're serving, and in this case for us, the small business, is actually good for business, right? Meeting our small business needs, doing what we can do to ensure their survival, in return, builds loyalty, deliver growth, and then back into the product platform and create that flywheel that I think from a product to end user perspective are really, really important. And I think the big key takeaway here for us is that focusing on social problem can actually be good for business and good for the organization. And so keeping that in mind, I think all of us here today who are working on technology, building products, we all have a huge opportunity to actually be able to deliver social impact on a daily basis as part of what we do, instead of thinking it as a parallel effort or separate effort on our engagement on a day-to-day basis, right? So, as we build product, the other important aspect is we need to make sure that the product intent and what we're trying to actually provide to our end user are actually well understood by it. So I will now pass it over to Birgitte, who's going to be speaking a little bit to us about the communication aspect of supporting small business this pandemic and how we've been evolving in that area. So Birgitte, I'm going to pass it to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ellen. And thank you, Mackenzie, and everyone on the Women Who Code team for inviting us to this online space with you today on the special Juneteenth holiday. So yes, I lead content marketing at Clover, and I wear many hats in that role, but at the end of the day, I'm a communicator and a storyteller. So before I launch into my part of the presentation, I want to give a little bit of a backdrop into what editing and writing means to me. For me, it has always been an exercise in empathy, because one of the most important and most challenging requirements of communications, no matter what kind of communications it is, you can be doing a web page, email, video, blog, social post, whatever it is to write for the audience, write for the reader, not for yourself. And I'm always telling that to our writers. Walk in the shoes of your readers. Imagine you're the merchant who's never ever heard of Clover. Feel what it feels like in your body, what it's like to be on your feet 13 hours a day if you're running a restaurant, and then be expected to get excited about an email that tells you about a new feature that you don't even understand. COVID, of course, took that up a few notches for us. It got a lot harder to slip into those shoes, to feel in our veins the shock of having to let go of staff that's been with you for 20 years, of seeing your lifelong dreams go up in smoke. Because on our side, we were not feeling that same pain. Everyone on our team still had a job. We could work from home. We didn't have staff on our payroll. So when you're in marketing, your primary job is not to sell. Your primary job is to speak to the needs, fears, concerns, and desires of your audience. And normally, yes, the end goal of marketing communication is, of course, to promote and ultimately sell, whether it's your brand, your products, or your services. But with COVID, the end goal of our communications had to change if we were to make that social impact Ellen was talking about, that impact we wanted to have on merchants' lives. And so we pivoted, right? Our goal instantly changed from promotion to support. That's how we approached every single email, every landing page, every blog post that went up. We had to implement a whole new vocabulary. All of these terms that you see here on the screen, social distancing, contactless, you've heard a lot of this. And these are the words that we had to now start implementing into our communications. For example, previously innocuous words that we use all the time in marketing, like offer and promote, were suddenly tainted with kind of a flippant promotionalism. Everyday marketing expressions like introducing this great new thing, or it's simple to do X, had a kind of a bizarre, out of touch flavor. Because communicating important information during these times of crisis has to be warm, clear, and concise. There's no time for flowers and there's no time for confusion. So we knew we had to stick with down-to-earth, action-oriented phrasing. So instead of saying, we want to offer online ordering, we said, do you need to set up online ordering? Because online ordering had become a need, not a want, overnight, and merchants had to get set up fast and for free. So here's another example that I'm gonna go take you through a series of examples about wording and imagery that we went through. On the left side, you see the original text. We understand how challenging it is for many of you to run your businesses during these uncertain times. At first glance, this is fine. But if you really sit with it for a little bit, you realize that the phrase "we understand" can have a patronizing overtone when it's delivered by a corporation to its customers. And the phrase for many of you suggests that we don't actually know who's being impacted and that we don't care because we haven't done our research. So when you change it a little bit, these little tweaks, you say, we get how challenging it is running a business during these uncertain times. Those words, we get it, create that instant connection, because that's how people talk when they feel and experience something, including crises and things of that nature, as opposed to just understanding something theoretically. And running a business replaces for many of you, and that takes out the issue of any specific numbers or merchants. And third, it shortens the sentence and makes it much more direct. Another example here is, we hope this, and you can fill in the blank. It can be functionality, it can be a product, whatever it is. We hope this product X helps you regain some of the income you're likely losing due to the COVID-19 crisis. Here's the problem with that. This example shows you the importance of not making assumptions, because no matter how accurate an assumption is, and in this case, we're assuming that these merchants are losing income, it's still an assumption and it can be inappropriate or hurtful. Right? Because losing money is no laughing matter for small businesses, and implying that our readers are failing to generate income is never the right message, but especially not so during a pandemic. It is not our place to make assumptions about the financial or other business aspects of our merchants' operations. And so this small edit, right, we hope this product X or whatever it is, helps you regain some of the income you might have lost, indicates a scenario that may be true for some but not for others. But most importantly, it implies that we care and we're sensitive to our merchants' unique circumstances. Here's another example about Clover Online ordering that Ellen talked about. So here we would have simply started off the body with, introducing Clover Online ordering and happily trotted out all the wonderful benefits of this feature. But during a health crisis, an intro like that is fairly tone deaf. So what we had done is in our initial general email communications that were not related to Clover Online ordering, we had spent time speaking to this new reality and assuring our merchants that we're actually here for them and that whatever we're doing is meant to help them, not to sell to them. And that's what you see in this first on the right side. COVID-19 has brought a suddenly complicated and uncertain new reality. That's a compilation of the ways that we handle it in those first initial emails. And then we replaced this longer paragraph with two short but powerful sentences. COVID-19 has been tough on restaurants. We're here to help. Why did we do that? Because repeating this first long version in multiple emails would signal to our audiences that we don't genuinely mean what we say, that we can't be bothered with crafting authentic, heartfelt communications, and that we're only saying it because we have to say something. So bottom line, it's always important to take the time to write from the heart, but especially so in times of crisis. So what happened with those emails? The colo emails exploded. Open rates were through the roof. Signups were stronger. We expected strong signups, but they were still stronger than expected. But we didn't celebrate. We knew the reason for this success was because the merchants receiving those emails were hurting. They were facing laying off their people, losing their businesses. And so when you're on the rescue squad and you're throwing a lifeline to a person caught in a riptide, you focus on that person's safety. You don't focus on how awesome you did throwing that lifeline. The other thing we had to do is reconsider all of our images. We could no longer show pictures of people congregating or standing close together or doing any of the normal things that people do. So here on the left, you see pre-COVID, long time ago, it feels like now. And on the right side, you see the kind of imagery that we would use for a restaurant blog post, for example. We found ourselves pulling a lot of single person with a POS device kind of imagery. And it took a bit, but we still were able to find perfectly great images. So on the left here, for example, retail space, right? You see something that's more appropriate for COVID. Here's another one for services. You can't shake hands anymore, so you've got to be in your office doing videos, much like this one. So I mentioned that I wear some of, at Clover, I wear a lot of hats, and one of them is as editor-in-chief of the Clover blog. So my job is to source ideas and topics, approve outlines, edit drafts, and ensure our posts are timely, relevant, and helpful to our merchants. And in January 2020, we had a packed calendar. We had created a new series called Meet the Merchant, which was inspired by my experience as a journalist. It was a Q&A format that would feature our merchants and tell their stories in their own words. We had a few other series in the works. Redesign your mental model, several posts on how to green your business, and one that would prove to be fairly prescient. It focused on recession-proofing your business because the financial world knew that a recession was coming, but none of us knew what would cause it. And oh my God, it hit us like a freight train. It threw all of our plans into a tailspin. All of a sudden, our entire editorial calendar seemed useless and disconnected from reality, because how can you talk about greening your business when your readers might be looking at losing their business? And how can we happily go on promoting our latest products and services, right, when everything but essential businesses were allowed to operate? So how do you pivot an editorial calendar? Well, you just got to let it go. Even if you have all of these posts already planned in various stages of production, you got to let it go. The first thing we knew we had to do is help our CEO get his message out. That was the first COVID-19 related post we did, and it was titled, "We're all in this together." And if you read not a single word beyond that headline, it already said it all, and that was the point. We wanted our merchants to know that were right there with them all the way. We also put together a living resource list of financial relief and support that we continue to update to this day. And I'm happy to say, by far, it is the most viewed blog post on the Clover blog since it went live. Ellen spoke about the product teams and how they pivoted. So we align closely with those product teams and make sure that we put our communications resources behind the functionality and the services that our merchants needed the most. Yes, we worked long hours, we pushed through posts that spoke directly to the pain our merchants were feeling and suggested ways to help that were not only simple, but importantly, low cost or free. So things like online ordering, contactless payments, curbside pickup and delivery. We waived fees everywhere we could to take that edge off for businesses whose cash flow was plummeting. The first COVID era Meet the Merchant post was about an ice cream shop that was able to launch an e-commerce site in 4 days using one of our partners, and she kept her orders coming in. We published 20 posts in 2 months, and on the website we produced numerous landing web pages and other materials and a whole online resource center with tools, videos, and information related to COVID-19. So, and that 50th anniversary Earth Day post that we were planning and were so excited about never saw the light of day. But what did see the light of day was our messages of support and solidarity. Clover, just to wrap up, Clover was originally founded upon the desire to help small businesses succeed and to gain access to all the tools and services that large enterprises have. Because for us, small businesses are vital to the larger economy, the same way that red blood cells are vital to our body. So when we support small merchants, they become stronger and contribute to our growth, which in turn enables us to nourish them further. This is how we participate in a symbiotic, collaborative, sustainable business community that gives back as it receives. And as businesses reopen around the country, we're taking in these new lessons learned and making sure that we apply them to all of our planning moving forward. So Ellen and I hope that you can benefit from these insights and experiences that we've shared with you today. And with that, we'd love to open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Ellen and Birgitte, for your presentation, and we'll take any questions that you have in the chat. Seeing a lot of praise in the chat.
Yeah, I think a lot of our learning is also how this is not only a one-time thing, but purpose could be very much of a galvanizing, I think, energy that carries the team through, right? And so I think the pandemic, sending everybody home, was obviously emotionally, mentally, has a lot of impact on all of us, right? Spoken or unspoken. And I think the fact that the purpose, the mission, and the idea that we are here to actually be able to do some social good and social impact back to our user actually became, I think, a driving force to bring people together and get us through it, not only from an output perspective, but as an organization. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well,
I think there's a question. How do you think this will change your process going forward? So from Jenny. I can take that, and Birgitte, love to kind of have you weigh in on your thoughts there as well. So what happened actually after this initial push of getting the features out, right? The question ultimately is going to come back in to say, so what happened to the rest of 2020? Right? Like, there was a plan, there was a roadmap, there was all this commitment. Basically, what we end up having to do is sort of anchor back to say, hey, what does the rest of the year look, right? And what are the things that we want to make sure is happening? And so what we end up doing is lean back into the purpose and the principle and say, before we look at roadmap, let's evaluate the key principle about the things that are really important for us at this moment. And where we landed was things into sort of kind of ensuring that we are able to provide a stable platform for all of our small business. The second thing is leaning into those purpose is understanding that life as we know it for a lot of our businesses has changed. And not only are we going to have to help them while consumer are away from the store, we're going to have to rethink what the experience in the store looks like when everyone come back, right? Like, it is not going to be business as usual. There's social distancing, there's everything else. Essentially, I think, Jenny, what we were able to do is go back and revisit the entire roadmap and rework it for the year based on the learnings, the purpose, and leaning back on some of our takeaway here to say, let's start from the intent of what we need as an organization to deliver for this year. Let's rework it, and let's use that model that we've learned around sort of rallying around principle, rallying around outcome for our end user. We knew it was better for us to focus on a couple critical areas that we can really make a difference on, instead of working on a lot of things. And I think I would be the first to say, when you're working for a team that's been growing as quickly as we have, while you have purpose, it's very easy to get distracted. It's very easy to get sidelined if different opportunity comes up. So in a lot of ways, it gives us a reflection call to think back on our mission and use that as an anchoring statement for the remaining of the year. And I'm hoping for our future as we see it.
Yeah, I think I couldn't have said it better myself. I think on our side for the editorial process, it only highlights what we were doing before, right? Is what I was talking about before, is that empathy. So when you write with purpose and you write with empathy, then you're going to take that message a lot further along. Because I think what happens is, especially in marketing, you have certain expressions that get overused, they become cliches, and they start to lose their meaning. But when you write, as I was explaining with all the examples that we were working through, you really have to think about the impact of the words that you use. You really have to put yourself in the shoes of that reader. That's probably the hardest thing for anybody to do, because you are not that reader, right? So unless you run a restaurant, do you really know what it's like? Unless you run a bookshop or gift cards or whatever, how do you feel? And it's not just the pain, it's also the joy, right? It's the joy of running that shop. So, I mean, I happen to be also a book publisher, so I know the pain of selling books and doing sales and use taxes and things like that. And that certainly helps if I write something about reporting, because I write from in here. I'm like, yes, I know exactly what it's like when I have to reconcile Amazon and Baker and Taylor and all these other companies. Right? For those things that I don't, I have to either talk to someone, research, or find a way to empathize, and it takes longer. You can't just edit something in a single sitting. You have to really think about it. But what I also say to anyone out there who's listening now, who's a writer, editor, or doing anything with communications, it gets easier with time, because that's experience that you start to internalize, and it becomes life experience, not just work experience. So I think that one of the most exciting things, if I can even say that word, given this pandemic for me, is we're able to bring our whole selves to our jobs today. We don't have to leave our real humanity behind anymore, right? We need that humanity in the office, because the office is now home anyway. So,
yeah. Right.
I'm not sure if there are any other questions.
Yeah. So Mackenzie, I guess if there is no other questions, sort of kind of the closing thoughts here, and something I'm hoping you guys can walk away from is, for us, what Birgitte mentioned of bringing yourself, bringing the empathy when we're looking to do social impact is a critical area, as well as really challenging yourself to see how social impact can actually be built into your everyday work life, right? If businesses are not the one driving social impact, and we're the one with the resource, with the reach, with the mind share and a lot of kind of energy behind growth, right? Like, it is harder for the overall social dynamic actually to change. So I think it's really a question, a challenge for all of us to reflect on our role, what we do, the product that we work on, and how we can build direct social benefit in our everyday life. And knowing that, again, I don't believe those should be trade-off. And we've seen over time that time and time again, when you meet the market demand, when you meet the end user need, it is good for society and it's good for business. So I think with that, thank you so much for having us on the stage, and appreciate the time that's been allotted.
Thank you so much for this awesome presentation, and you gave a lot of really great advice and insight. And I especially like what you said about there's no time for flowers. There's no time for confusion, being like warm, concise with your message, and giving us examples of that messaging, and how you work through that. And it was really awesome to hear your personal stories too about how you project your own empathy into your products that you're building, into your company. And so thank you so much for being here and for this presentation. And thank you all so much for joining today's session. And we'll see you in the next session. So thank you. Bye.
Great. Thank you.